Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're kind of wrestling with this powerful idea about history. You know that famous line from Sandayana?
Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it really resonates, doesn't it? It feels like sometimes we're just stuck in this loop, making the same mistakes over and over, personally or, as a whole society.
It really does feel that way. And Mark Twain had that witty take, too, that history rhymes, even if it doesn't exactly repeat.
Right.
Both sayings point to this human tendency. And that's exactly what Pastor Florin got into in his sermon on 1 Corinthians. He was showing how the Apostle Paul was dealing with this very thing.
Using ancient history, Israel's past, to speak to us now.
Spot on. Using their stories to shed light on our own lives today.
That's what we want to do here, continue that conversation. This deep dive is really about picking up where the sermon left off, letting Pastor Florin's message sink in a bit deeper.
Yeah, to really internalize it.
Our mission, I guess, is to explore what it really means to apprentice under Jesus. How to live a life that's practical, grounded in faith, and genuinely hopeful.
Especially thinking about some of the challenges young people are facing right now.
Exactly. Making that ancient wisdom feel, real and usable today.
It's not just about knowing stuff about Jesus, it's learning how to actually live like him.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Paul jumps right in with the Corinthians in chapter 10.
Right.
He tells them, I don't want you to be ignorant about their ancestors. And he's reaching back, 1,300, maybe 1,500 years? To Exodus and Numbers, that's a long time ago.
It's a huge historical jump, but Paul sees the lessons as timeless. He retells Israel's story escaping Egypt with Moses, the 40 years in the desert, moving into Canaan.
And he uses some interesting language like baptized into Moses. What's that about? It sounds different from how we usually talk about baptism.
Right. It wasn't about a church ceremony back then. It was this powerful symbol of submitting to Moses' leadership, saying, we're with him, we follow his way.
Just like being baptized into Christ today means accepting Jesus' leadership, his authority, and committing to his way of life. It's about allegiance.
Got it. So it's deep commitment. And then he mentions spiritual food and drink. What did he mean by spiritual there? Was that just a metaphor?
Well, this gives us a peek into Paul's worldview, his ancient mindset. When he talked about the heavens, he really meant the spiritual realm, God's domain.
Okay.
So the manna, that bread from the sky, and the water from the rock for Paul, these were literally supernatural gifts coming straight from that spiritual dimension, from God.
So not just symbolic.
No, not merely symbolic. He saw them as truly spiritual because of their origin. It was God's tangible provision from the heavens. Our modern idea of spiritual might be a bit more abstract sometimes.
Right. But for him, it was concrete.
Very concrete. And then he drops this bombshell.
Yeah.
The rock was Christ.
Whoa. That sounds like Jesus was right there with them way back then, centuries before he was born in Bethlehem. Yeah, it's pretty profound. See, ancient Jewish thought had this idea of God showing up, manifesting physically sometimes as the angel of the Lord, or even like those strangers who visited Abraham. And the first followers of Jesus, Paul included, understood Jesus as divine, as God. Jude, in his letter, actually says flat out that Jesus was the one who led Israel out of Egypt.
Wow, okay. I didn't know that was in Jude.
Yeah, Jude 1.5. So Paul wasn't just being poetic. He was stating a deep theological belief. Jesus was present and active with Israel in the wilderness.
Okay, so you have this incredible closeness, God providing directly, Jesus leading them, but then Paul hits them with, nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered all over the wilderness.
Yeah, it's jarring, isn't it?
It really is. How could people who saw so much, who were so close to God, still mess up so badly?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's Paul's main point. He repeats it later. These things happen as examples, as warnings for us.
Us, like today.
Yes, us today, the ones on whom the culmination of the ages has come, as he puts it. The whole point is, learn from their history. Don't make the same mistakes. Don't set your hearts on evil things.
So even with amazing spiritual experiences, we can still go off track.
Absolutely. It's a sobering reminder about human nature.
And Paul zeroes in on idolatry as the root issue for Israel, right? That whole golden calf incident in Exodus 32, making their own religion, having a big party.
The revelry. Pastor Florin mentioned it might have even felt good, felt spiritual or uplifting to them at the time.
But it was still idolatry. So how does that ancient idea translate? What does idolatry look like for us maybe especially for younger people today.
That's the key connection. It's not usually about literal statues anymore. Paul gives 3 specific examples of Israel's failures, and they echo really strongly today.
Okay, what are they?
First, verse 8, he mentions sexual immorality. He says 23,000 died in one day. That probably points back to Numbers 25, a plague that broke out after Israelites got involved sexually with Moabite women.
Okay. And there's a number difference there, isn't there, between Paul and Numbers?
Yeah, Numbers says 24,000. Ancient readers weren't usually bothered by slight variations like that. Paul's main point wasn't the exact count, it was the deadly consequence of, well, sexual expression outside of God's design, outside that harmony he intends.
And that hits home today, right? For young people, maybe that looks like chasing validation through online hookups or dealing with body image issues from social media or just the pain from relationships that are more about instant gratification than real connection.
Absolutely. It deeply affects self-worth, mental health. It's a huge modern struggle, a kind of idol.
Definitely. What's the second example?
Second, verse 9 is testing the Lord, the consequence, being killed by snakes. This refers to Numbers 21 when the Israelites got impatient, started complaining against God and Moses.
Impatience. Yeah, I can see that.
Think about it. How often do we get frustrated when things are hard? Maybe question God or push back against guidance, especially for young people used to instant everything apps, social media answers.
Right, waiting for spiritual growth can feel slow.
Exactly. So it's easy to get impatient, maybe doubt things, or just resist help when life gets tough because we want that quick fix that often isn't there.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and the third one?
Third, grumbling. In verse 10, Paul says they were killed by the destroying angel. This links to number 16, where some leaders rose up against Moses and Aaron.
Grumbling feels common, maybe even harmless sometimes, like just venting. Is there a difference?
That's a really good question. The kind of grumbling Paul's talking about here seems to be more than just letting off steam. It's like this deep antagonism towards leaders God put in place, or just a general spirit of discontent that poisons everything.
Okay.
Think about how easy that is today online, right? Constant criticism, tearing down anything related to faith or authority. It can be just as spiritually deadly. Paul's saying these patterns, idolatry, immorality, testing God, grumble, they run deep and they pull us away from God's intended harmony.
Wow, that's a heavy list of warnings. But thankfully, Paul doesn't just leave us there, right?
Yeah.
He shifts gears in verse 13.
He does. It's such a crucial verse. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear.
That's a relief.
It is. And he continues, but when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it.
So there's always hope, always a way through.
Exactly. It's not just comfort, it's empowerment. It means God always gives us an opportunity, a path, to align ourselves with his good plan, his harmony, even when it feels impossible.
And this connects to choice, right?
Absolutely. It hinges on the belief that we, as humans, have this incredible privilege of choice. We actually have the power to make those tough decisions that line up with Jesus' way, no matter how hard things seem.
But let's be real for a second. You hear it all the time in our culture, that phrase, I had no choice. People say it about big things, small things, giving in to pressure, making a bad call.
Oh yeah, it's a common fallback.
How does Paul's message hit back against that?
Paul just obliterates that idea. He basically says that's a lie. We always have a choice. Always. And recognizing that is fundamental for taking responsibility, for real empowerment. It means we're not just puppets of our circumstances or our feelings. God provides the way out, the alternative, and we have the agency, the power to choose it, to choose wisdom, to choose God's harmony.
That's huge, especially I think for young people who might feel totally overwhelmed or trapped sometimes.
It's incredibly empowering.
So, okay, thinking about all this.
Yeah.
Pastor Florin's invitation to become an apprentice of Jesus really clicks now.
Right.
Like any apprenticeship, you're learning from the master, aiming to become more like them. It's practical. It's about skills for living.
Exactly. It's not just theory, it's practice. Putting it into action.
Which means even something like communion, the Lord's Supper, maybe a modern kind of spiritual food and drink. It's important, yeah.
It is important.
But it's not like a magic pill that fixes everything.
Right. It's the daily choices, the obedience, the actual practice of following Jesus that sustains our spiritual life. That's the core of apprenticeship.
So for everyone listening, wanting to take this seriously, what are some practical things we can actually do? Pastor Florin laid out 5 steps. Maybe you can pick just one to start, but let's quickly cover them.
Sure. 5 great starting points. First, study the past to gain wisdom.
Right.
And remember the difference Pastor Florin highlighted. Knowledge is information, but wisdom is applying that information with compassion, understanding the why behind history.
So like reading Exodus not just as facts, but as a story, maybe taking notes.
Exactly. Treat it like a biography you're learning from. Jot down your thoughts, questions, make it active.
Good advice. What's number 2?
Second, become an apprentice of Jesus. Sounds big, but it starts simple. It's a heart decision, a verbal commitment. Just telling God, Lord Creator, I want to be an apprentice of Jesus.
That's the first step.
That's the first step. And then it's really important to plug into an apprenticeship training center. That's what church is meant to be, a community where we learn and grow together.
So it's not just a solo journey.
Definitely not. It links us to something bigger. When we follow Jesus, we're adopted into God's family. We become citizens of God's nation, the kingdom of God.
The kingdom of God.
Hmm.
That sounds, well, national.
It is. It's a real kingdom with its own heritage, its own distinct culture. Jesus told us to seek that kingdom first, his righteousness, because everything else flows from there. Apprenticeship is learning the ways of that kingdom.
That's a helpful perspective. And you mentioned a practical step for connecting.
Yeah, if you want to start that journey with Agape Community Church, you can just text Yes God to 84576. It's a simple way to signal you're ready.
Okay, good to know. What's the third action?
Third, set up obedience reminders. We need those nudges. Pastor Florin said, spiritual food is important, but obedience matters more.
Little reminders.
Yeah, like a simple note card on the bathroom mirror or on the fridge, a verse, an encouragement for a habit you're building. Just structuring your space to help you make good choices.
I like that. Practical. Number 4.
Fourth, don't waste your circumstances. This one's powerful. Whatever you're going through, especially the tough stuff, can be an example, a message.
How so?
It's about your response. Paul modeled it. Bless when cursed, endure persecution, answer kindly when slandered, or sometimes just stay quiet if you can't answer kindly.
So turning hard times into a kind of testimony.
Exactly. Your response becomes the message. It can be tough, though, right? When you're frustrated or you've messed up, seeing it as an example feels hard.
Yeah. What's the mindset shift needed there?
I think it's recognizing that even in failure or pain, your reaction still matters. Choosing grace, choosing to keep going, choosing kindness that transforms the situation. It gives it purpose beyond the immediate pain.
That really reframes things.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one, number 5.
Fifth, change your decision vocabulary. Get rid of I had no choice. Paul blew that excuse out of the water.
So what do we replace it with?
Try this. Based on the wisdom given to me, I made the best possible choice. It reaffirms your agency. It reminds you that you did have a choice, even if it was difficult, and you have the power to make choices aligned with God's harmony.
Taking back control of the narrative.
Exactly.
Wow. These 5 steps really give a clear path. This whole conversation, digging into Pastor Florin's message, it just underlines how powerful learning from the past is and how practical this apprenticeship with Jesus actually is.
Yeah, it's not just head knowledge. It's about how we live, day by day.
Practical hope for real life, turning insight into action.
That's the goal. Building a life that really reflects Jesus.
Well, if this deep dive was helpful for you listening, please subscribe to the deep dive and maybe share it with a friend you think might appreciate it.
Yeah, we'd love that. And please know, if you need prayer for anything, you can go to Agape Church Life and submit a request online. Our prayer team genuinely prays over every single one.
It's great.
Also, you can check out the Agape Community Church YouTube channel. We're still working on it, adding things, but it's getting better. Worth a look.
Awesome. Okay, so to wrap up, here's something to chew on. You always have a choice, even when it feels like you absolutely don't. How might really grabbing hold of that truth change how you approach your very next decision? How could it help you align that choice with wisdom, with God's harmony?
Good question to ponder.
Think about that one. Until next time on The Deep Dive.